Chapter 132, The Agreement Under the Sewage. There really is a mole. Fan Xian and Xian Shaoqing simultaneously opened their mouths in a very 8 o'clock manner, then simultaneously stopped talking. Both of them believed that the head of the Northern Qi secret spies in their own country was definitely not a softy who would open up under torture, and since the other party was able to capture Yan Bingyun so easily and knew his real name, it was obvious that someone hidden in the midst of Qing's imperial government must have some sort of agreement with the Northern Qi side. Xian Shaoqing shook his head. Before this matter, even the Crown Prince and I did not know that Duke Yan had gone to Northern Qi. I think there are at most no more than 5 people in the court who are qualified to know about this matter. If they say that they are selling the country, no fool would believe it. Selling the country always requires benefits. And the fact is that this entire country of Qing is what His Majesty has put these people in charge of, so what benefits can there be in selling the country? Fan Xian and Xian Shaoqing looked at each other. Both could see the sorrow in the other's eyes as they both thought of something terrible at the same time. What if it wasn't an inside job? What if it's just a tactic used by some ministers in the court to combat the supervisory yuan? Fan Xian thought that when Wang Qinian told himself about Yan Bingyun, he felt a little strange. Why did he even know? Why did he even know about it? Did the supervisory yuan have so much confidence in its own internal control? Only later did he realize that it was Chen Pingping who had told himself about this matter through Wang Qinian, but at this point, he was still a bit afraid that if the news had leaked out from his side, he would really die a million deaths. Will there be such a crazy person? Just for the sake of the power struggle in the dynasty, he would step on the interests of the entire Qing country. Xian Shaoqing shook his head with a bitter smile. Fan Xian also shook his head, thinking of his trip to the palace, and knew in his heart that there were actually quite a lot of such high-powered lunatics in Qing. He settled down and asked, assuming that Prince Yan has been captured, what kind of arrangements does His Holiness have in mind? Bei Qi still underestimated His Holiness' determination. As soon as Xian Shaoqing thought of that high and mighty Son of Heaven, he immediately felt a sense of confidence in his heart and said, the occupied territory is still not letting go of an inch. Fan Xian was surprised and said, what about Mr. Yan? Change. Xian Shaoqing showed a sinister look on his face. Exchange of prisoners. His Majesty's idea has been finalized. The previous prisoner exchange agreement is all cancelled and redrafted. Just waiting for the Northern Qi side to send Duke Yan's token to confirm, and then a new round of prisoner exchange negotiations will begin. Fan Xian frowned and said, Beiki is full of thoughts that they are holding a big fish, so I guess they won't agree. Xian Shaoqing said in a chilling voice, we will also send 2 more people back to Bei Qi this time. If Beiki is still unwilling, after March at the time of Shuadong, His Holiness will behead 1,000 captives from Beiki, send them back to Beiki, and the army will rise again. Pressing people with power is a helpless move, but I'm afraid that the Beiki side will also come to a fish out of water. There are a total of 3,000 captives on both sides, so it's always useless to kill and kill and kill. Fan Xian's hand gently slapped the bookcase, and a strange thought suddenly surged in his heart. Who are the 2 people who are going to join the prisoner exchange? Will they be able to get Beiki to agree? One is Shan, who has been imprisoned for 20 years. Xian Shaoqing looked at him gently, knowing that this young man did not know Shan's name. This person was the head of Northern Wei's secret spies back then, before the Second Northern Expedition. Director Chen of the Supervisory Academy and Lord Fei personally led the Black Horseman in a strange raid of 1,000 miles and captured him alive on top of Shaoan's son's wedding. After he was captured by us, the Northern Wei spy network leaderless, suddenly into a scattered sand, when His Majesty's personal expedition, in order to be as strong as a bamboo, raw a huge empire into today's weak look. Later on, when the merits were evaluated, the supervisory court awarded the first merit for this matter, and at that time, we young scholars all thought that if Shan was not so bold as to leave the upper capital of Beiki so far away to attend his son's wedding, the imperial court must not have been able to catch him, and then the subsequent battles would not have been so smooth. Listening to these decades-old passages, Fan Xian sighed breathlessly and listened again to Xian Shaoqing's latter words. Of course, Shan was bold enough to dare to leave Shanjing. President Chen was even more daring, actually daring to go 800 miles deep into enemy territory, and although he paid the price of a pair of legs, he caught Xiao En after all. Before that, Xiao En of the Northern Wei and Chen Pingping of the Southern Qing were known to the world as the most terrifying ministers of darkness, and after Xiao En was captured alive by President Chen, naturally, no one dared to be compared to President Chen anymore. Fan Xian listened with a yearning. It turned out that the old cripple's leg was actually broken that time, and it was unthinkable that Chen Pingping had such a valiant side back then. Take Shan and exchange him for Yin Bingyun. He thought for a moment. Judging purely from reason, it seems like we lost out. Last night, several ministers thought so as well. Xian Shaoqing looked at him with a smile. However, His Majesty and President Chen don't see it that way. After all, Shan is already 70 years old, and once he has been defeated at the hands of President Chen, it is naturally impossible for him to repeat that year's luster. Duke Yan endured humiliation, sneaking around the enemy country for 4 years, and his merits and honors have appeared without being awarded. What's wrong with exchanging an old man for the future of Qing? What's wrong with that? Fan Xian nodded his head repeatedly and asked curiously, "Are you still afraid that Beiki is unwilling to do so, and who has been added?" That woman was a request that Bei Qi had made in the past, so His Holiness simply granted it altogether. Xian Shaoqing looked at Fan Xian and suddenly laughed. "I heard that the Emperor of Northern Qi liked that woman very much, so it seems that later on, Lord Fan has already preempted the young Emperor of Northern Qi and put a green hat on him." Fan Xian's face was a bit brilliant as he said indistinctly, "Could it be Si Lili?" Negotiations are always divided into two parts in the process, on the surface of the courtiers of Qing and the delegation of Northern Qi in the negotiation table word by word, for every name. Every use of words have shown some kind of morbid obsession, the only way to ensure that the face of the state dynasty will not be in the final state of the book of the country weaker by a few points. So every day in Honglu Temple is always noisy nonstop, slap the table, step on the chair, which is like two countries in the negotiations, purely in the vegetable market shrews in each other. The other part of the negotiations, but seems cold and direct many, here the negotiations do not have the presence of Honglu Temple officials, the Northern Qi side is not the head of the mission's face characters, but hidden in the shadows, can really talk about the real power of the characters. Supervisory yuan for adults yen ruai, placed in the officials such as walking dog swimming carp in Kyoto, is also a bit of a well-known high-level figures. He coldly in the prisoner exchange secret agreement signed, and did not look at the paperwork a glance. The agreement has his own son's name on it. Originally he could have resigned from this negotiation, but he insisted to come and have a look. The unassuming official from Beiki smiled as he drew his signature and looked at Yen Ruai and said softly, "Don't worry, Mr. Yen, your son is having a good time in his country." Yen Ruai said expressionlessly, "I wanted to see how skillful my colleagues in the north were today to catch the little brat I taught from childhood, but seeing you, this fool, I know what's going on." That official didn't burst into a rage, but only retorted grimly, "Lord Words, don't go too far with your words, but you should know that your son is still in our hands. If we are fools, then what does your son count as? What do you count as?" Yin Ruohai sneered twice, got up and walked towards the door, saying, "The problem lies in the fact that my son was not captured by you." Walking out the door, Chen Pingping, who was sitting in a wheelchair, glanced at him and shook her head. "You've been in this position for a long time. You are no longer as tolerant as you were back then." "I can tolerate a lot, but I can't tolerate cold arrows shot from behind." It could be seen that Yen Ruohai spoke with respect to his superior, pushing Chen Pingping's wheelchair and slowly walking towards the quiet place. Chen Pingping sat in the wheelchair and stretched out a finger. "Inside the imperial court, I don't know how many people want you and I to die. This time we can take Xiao En to exchange for Bing Yun. Next time I don't have someone like Xiao En in my hands." Yen Ruohai responded, "There is no next time. We need to hurry up and find that person out." Chen Pingping said, "This time, the emperor sided with us because he was clear that it must be one of the nobles who wanted to teach us a lesson. But I don't like this feeling of being picked on." "Yes, Dean. Yin Ruohai knew that his old boss would find a way to deal with this matter, so he wasn't in much of a hurry, even though the prisoner exchange doesn't necessarily go smoothly. As long as Bingyun doesn't die, it can be considered a refining for the young people, which is not a bad thing. Makes sense, so I've also decided to let a young man go and hone his skills. It doesn't need to be too long, a few months would be good. A few months? Is it the matter of this return mission to Northern Qi? Not bad, and also to bring back Yin Bingyun in one piece. I hope he can handle it. Who is it? I'll let all 8 of you meet him before we leave. Everything was going smoothly. After Qingguo paid a considerable amount of chips, the two sides drew up an agreement to exchange prisoners as well as secretly exchange undercover spies, and everyone was happy. Qingguo got face and land, and Beiqi got face with Shan and the woman the emperor liked. Only the mission from Dongyi City stayed honestly in the courtyard, and the people seemed to have forgotten about him. The Qing court is also deliberately cold to the other side, in order to rely on the matter of the foot of Tsangshan Mountain to extort more money. Dongyi City is the world's giant merchants gathered, long before the Qing court opened the southern port, began to trade with the foreign barbarians. Although the force is only the 4-gu sword, a sword of the sky, the financial power is inexhaustible. 3 days later, it was the day of His Majesty the Emperor of Qing Dynasty's palace banquet for the ambassadors of the two countries. Fan Xian, as the deputy negotiating ambassador, naturally had to go to the palace to attend the banquet, which would be his second time in the palace, and also the night he had planned for. He carefully prepared everything in his room, only his eyes occasionally glancing over the black leather case that showed a corner under his bed. In these few days of official business, he saw something more deeply. The kingdom of Qing seemed huge and powerful, unrivaled, but inside the court, caught in the ulterior thoughts of certain nobles, there would still be so much dirt and black water. The emperor's family was ruthless, but not necessarily towards the members of the royal family, but more towards the subjects of the world. Fan Xian knew very well that even if His Majesty knew who was trying to deal with his own secret service, he wouldn't really kill them because those people could be his wife, his sister, his son, or even his mother. Be a person who thinks purely for himself. This was something Fan Xian had reminded himself of countless times since coming to this world. His gaze grew cold as he hid the slender dagger and carefully inserted the 3 fine needles soaked in poison into his hair.